Hello everyone. So this is an experiment, not an experiment. It's a thing I tried last year but it didn't work out too well because I started too late in the year. But I'm gonna actually try and stay on track with it by starting at the beginning of the year this time. And that is my movie watch list thing that I do. Basically what this is just me talking about the movies that I've seen so far this year. They're not necessarily new releases, all of them. Like, some of them are, but some of them are just movies that I've watched for the first time this year. Just because I like movies and I want to talk about them, and like, you know, if anyone happens to want to have a conversation about a movie, I'm here for that. Basically, I just have this Word document that's titled Movies I Watched for the First Time in 2019, and I just keep track of the movies that I watched. So for each movie, I write like when I saw it, I write just my general thoughts about it. Like I have a lot of points for each movie because I kind of just like stream of consciousness type out like what I thought about it, and then I also include like a rating. It's kind of an arbitrary rating, but it's kind of just a way to like judge how much I liked the movie, especially for these purposes. So with all that being said, I'm going to talk about some of the movies that I've seen. If it's a newer movie, I'm gonna try and avoid spoilers, and if I do talk about spoilers, I'll do like first a non-spoilery like review, or just talk about it, and then I'll let you know when I'm gonna get into spoiler stuff and give you a timestamp so you can like skip ahead if you don't want to get it spoiled for you. But if it's like an older movie, like, I'm probably not gonna worry too much about spoilers because I assume that most people have seen the movie by this point and I'm just like really far behind. But now that I've got that out of the way, I can finally get to talking about the movies. So I started off the year pretty strong as far as movies go, because the first movie that I saw this year was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
When do I know I'm Spider-Man?
You won't. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
Like, what's up, danger? Like, what's up, danger?
This movie is so good. It's one of the best, I was gonna say best like animated movies I've ever seen, but not even just that, it's one of the best like superhero movies I've ever seen. Like, first of all, the animation itself is just so beautiful and like unique. It's a very distinct style, it's very stylized, and I really like that. And what's cool about this movie is that there is like a main kind of animation style, but then it's also slightly different for all the different like spider people. You know, like Penny Parker, she's more like about like an anime looking style animation, and then like Spider-Ham is very like cartoony Looney Tunes looking, right? And that's just really like stuff like that's really cool. I found that like so interesting how they were able to incorporate different styles of animation but have them all like work coherently together. And then animation aside, the story is incredible. It's just so compelling and interesting, and there was never like a boring moment, and I just felt so invested in every single one of the characters. Even the villain had like a compelling and like understandable somewhat reason to be doing what he was doing, and I loved the way that they conveyed like his kind of backstory and his motives, because they didn't have him standing up giving like a big villain monologue about all his plans and stuff. They just had like a quick flashback scene with not a lot of speaking, but it really conveyed what they wanted to convey. It was just a cool way of doing it. I don't know, I'm not explaining it properly, but like, it was really cool. I love Miles so much. He's my new favorite. I love all the characters. And the movie is like freaking hilarious. It's so funny, and like the jokes never come at the expense of like an emotional moment or anything like that, but it's just genuinely funny. Like, I was laughing at all of it. So if you haven't seen this movie yet, you know how Marvel does their after credit scenes. That is what they're known for. I mean, it's not the only thing that they're known for, but it's like a thing that they're known for. Anyways, this movie does have an after credit scene. Like, it has like a mid-credits thing as well as like an after credit scene, and I heavily recommend that you stay and watch the after credit scene. I guess it's not in theaters anymore, so you can just fast forward, which is nice. But it is probably my favorite after credit scene that Marvel's ever done. It's so good. It genuinely felt worth the wait in the theater for it. Because sometimes Marvel like does after credit scenes that really don't feel like they were worth like sitting in the theater for. Like, I'm specifically thinking of the one in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Like, the mid-credit scene, obviously very important and good and everything, but the after-credits one where it's just like the ant playing on the drums, it's like, why did I stay for that? Like, it's kind of funny, I guess, but like, I don't like end credits stuff like that. Like, I want to feel like it was actually something worth waiting for. And this one definitely was. It was funny. I couldn't stop laughing. It was very funny. The voice work in this movie is fantastic. The voice actors were just so great, and everyone was so well cast. The soundtrack is banging. It made me like a Post Malone song, which is not something that happens normally. This movie had some twists, had emotional moments. It was great. I absolutely loved it. I think everyone on the planet needs to watch this. I rated this movie a 9.5 out of 10, which I think is like the highest rating I've ever given a movie on any of my like movie lists. So from there, the next movie that I watched was Troy.
I'll make a pact with you. With the gods as our witnesses, let us pledge that the winner will allow the loser all the proper funeral rituals.
There are no pacts between lions and men.
Now you know who you're fighting.
I had a class last year where we read the Iliad and the Odyssey, and we just talked about them and stuff. And so that was the first time I'd ever fully read those stories, and I kind of got like invested in it. And I wanted to like read and watch more things about like specifically the story of the Iliad. So like I have the Song of Achilles, I still haven't read it because I never got around to it, but I eventually planned to read that. And then I wanted to watch this movie because it's like it's somewhat based off the Iliad, like it's based off the general story of the Iliad and the Trojan War and everything. It takes some liberties and it deviates in some ways, but it's like generally the same story. In this movie they do this thing where they really skew it so that you feel sympathetic towards Helen and Paris, like more so than when you're reading the Iliad. I'm gonna keep comparing it to the Iliad just because I've read it and I can compare it and it's supposed to be based off of that somewhat, so you know. But I also realize that it's its own thing. Anyways, you do feel really sympathetic for Helen and Paris because they really make Menelaus out to be this like jerk. Like he's really kind of the worst. And I remember him being a lot more likable in the Iliad. Like, not that the Iliad put the blame on Helen too much, like you did still feel a little bit, you know, sympathetic for her specifically, not really for Paris. But yeah, the movie I think tried to make it like less of a complicated issue by just being like, look, Menelaus kind of sucks, so it's understandable why Helen would leave to go with Orlando Bloom. I mean, wouldn't we all? Also, the movie is very sympathetic to Hector, which I really like because Hector is one of the few likable characters in this story. I remember even reading the Iliad, he was one of the few characters that I liked. And he's like the most likable character in this one too. Like Achilles is kind of the main character, you could argue, of the Iliad, but Hector's the one that you root for. He's got his wife and his kid, and he just wants to protect a city, and he kind of just got roped into this because Paris is stupid. And yeah, I thought Eric Bana did a really good job portraying him. On the note of casting, I think the casting was like pretty good generally. Like I think Orlando Bloom was a pretty good Paris. I also think that it was a good casting for him as Paris with Eric Bana as Hector, just because they kind of look similar and they have very similar voices, so it's like believable that they'd be brothers. Brad Pitt as Achilles is interesting just because he has like a kind of shaky accent. Like sometimes he sounds British and sometimes he sounds American. I don't know. It's weird. One thing about this movie is that I feel like they didn't handle the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus that well. They don't set it up as a friendship or anything, they set it up as like they're cousins, and I don't remember if they're actually cousins or not in the Iliad, but they don't really show them together that much. They show them together a little bit at the beginning, kind of sparring, and then like throughout they're kind of like, you know, talking or seen together, but they don't seem to have like that close of a relationship, so it's kind of weird when Achilles goes into this mega rage when Patroclus dies because you don't see him, you know, being super close with Patroclus before that point. Like I guess they're kind of implying that they have this long history just because they're cousins and stuff, right? But I don't know. I guess in the Iliad you don't see them together too much, but like just some of the lines they have and the way they talk to each other, it's very obvious that they're very close, and it's just not as obvious in the movie. I feel like that's kind of to the movie's detriment because that's a main part of the Iliad. Yeah, overall it was like a fine movie. It dragged a little in parts. I'm not sure how I felt about the relationship between Achilles and Briseis. Because you know, in the Iliad she's kind of just like his like slave, not slave, it's like his war prize that he is just mad that Agamemnon tries to steal, and the women are treated a lot more like objects in that. So I'd like that she had like a little bit of agency in this, but at the same time it seems like she like fell in love with him too quickly. It was kind of weird. I'm just a fan of ancient Greek stuff, so I enjoy watching that in general. Yeah, I liked it. I gave it a 7 out of 10. It was just pretty good, you know? The next movie that I watched was Back to the Future. Yeah, it's kind of weird, but I've never seen this movie until this point. I mean, I feel like this is one of those ones where I don't need to talk about it too much because I'm sure most of the people watching this have seen it already. I like the aesthetic of it. Like, it's very 80s when they're in the 80s, and then I like when they go back to like the 50s era, and it's like the 80s aesthetic but also a 50s aesthetic, which is like two of my favorite aesthetics. What am I saying? I don't know, it's just cool. Like, generally I just liked the look of the movie and the feeling of it. I'm one of those people that didn't live in the 80s but has a weird 80s nostalgia, so you know. This movie is funny and it's good, and you don't need me to tell you that it's a classic. It's a good movie. It's just a lot of fun. Like, it's just, you know, a fun time movie. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. Whatever. I just never know what to say about these old movies because I always feel like if I go in saying, oh, I thought this was really cool in it, like, yeah, obviously, like, this movie's been out for forever. Where have you been? Anyways, I rated this movie 8 out of 10. And the next movie I saw was Back to the Future Part 2.
Checking landing gear.
shark still looks fake.
The copy we got from the library had like all 3 movies in it. We never got around to watching the 3rd one, but it looks pretty wild, so maybe we will eventually. But anyways, we watched the 2nd part, and my thoughts are that it's not quite as good as the first one, but still enjoyable. I mean, it's kind of funny now just for different reasons than it would have been at the time. Like they go to 2015, which for them is like the far future, kind of. And for us, that was 4 years ago. So it's just kind of a weird dynamic watching that in 2019. But like, they surprisingly got a lot of stuff right. Like, at one point he puts on like a holographic baseball cap. And I was like, I mean, that's a pretty good, like, random prediction. Like, people wear hollow stuff all the time now. I mean, maybe not in 2015, but like, it's in style now. Or like, they have like the 80s nostalgia cafe type thing. Which they probably thought was hilarious at the time. They were thinking, no one's gonna be nostalgic for the 80s, like, whatever. But, here we are. I'm living proof that there's people that are nostalgic for the 80s. And it's like weird to think about that we'll probably have like stuff like that in like 20, 30 years from now. There'll be people that are like nostalgic for the 2010s. Like what? I feel like this movie just rehashed a lot of the same stuff from the first one, which is like fine, whatever, it works. But it's different enough to keep it somewhat interesting. I thought it was just going to be them in the future, but then they end up jumping back to the past, and then they come back to like the present. It's like an alternate universe kind of thing. So that was interesting. I got a little bored during the middle of this one and started going on my phone, so I mean, I gotta be honest about that. It was dragging a bit for me for some reason. Maybe I just wasn't high on concentration that day. But you know, it was pretty good. I generally enjoyed it, and I rated it 7 out of 10. So far, all pretty positive. And the last movie that I've gotten to so far this year, I haven't watched very many movies this year, as you can tell. The last movie that I got to was The Grinch.
Watch out! No! My letter!
What is wrong with you? Didn't you see me? I mean, if that was a sled, I'd be dead.
I'm sorry for bumping into you, but this is really important. Have you seen my letter?
And that right there, Max, is the true nature of the Who child. Just write to me, my letter, me.
No, you don't understand.
And obviously, as you just saw from the clip, it's the newer version of The Grinch, not the Jim Carrey one, or like the old one. So since there is those 2 other Grinch movies, obviously this one kind of has to be compared to them. It doesn't have to, it can stand on its own, but naturally you're going to want to compare them. And it's definitely not my favorite of the 3. I think the Jim Carrey one still holds the top spot, but I liked it more than I thought I would. Also, we watched it in February, so it's, you know, kind of weird watching a Christmas movie in February, but like whatever, it was on the pay-per-view, so we watched it. The first note that I had about it was they started off with this kind of like updated version of You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, and I hated it. It didn't sound good. Like, it sounded like they tried to like modernize and update it, which is like all well and good, but it didn't sound good. It just sounded like clunky, and like some SoundCloud rapper mixed it or something. It was really weird. I didn't love it. I think Benedict Cumberbatch did a really good job. He was able to distinguish his Grinch from like the other 2, especially from Jim Carrey. Like, his Grinch was very different. It was like, he was more likable, and he wasn't like as weird and wild and out there as the Jim Carrey one. Like, this Grinch is like kind of normal and relatable. Like, he's not even that mean. And I actually really liked how they focused a lot on his relationship with Max. It was very cute, and I liked it a lot. The storyline with Cindy Lou and her mom was kind of interesting just because of like the themes it was touching on, and how it was like about this like single mom and like this daughter trying to help her out and stuff. But it also kind of just felt out of place. Like, it didn't really seem to intersect with the Grinch storyline too much. Like, it seemed like they really had to force them together. It didn't kind of just naturally intertwine like they did in like, say, the Jim Carrey version. And like, instead of being a second part of the main plot, it just kind of felt like a side plot, and I didn't really care as much about it as I did about like the Grinch and Max and what they were doing. So the one thing that I actually really liked about this movie was that I went into it expecting it to be kind of like cynical and almost making fun of itself in a way. Maybe not of itself, but just it being like more of a cynical Grinch. It was actually really wholesome and very earnest and sweet. Like, it was just meaning what it said, and it was very cute. I liked it. Like, I think at the end they have that toast, and I think it's the Grinch that says, "To kindness and love, the things we need most." And I really love messages like that. Like, I know it's kind of cheesy, and that obviously, you know, just kindness and love can't fix everything, but I do feel like our world needs more kindness and love, and that's a good place to start in this world of outrage and everything like that. So I mean, I know it's not, like, this Grinch movie's not gonna change the world, but, like, I do appreciate when movies have messages like that. Just something very simple, but, like, poignant at the same time. I don't know. The world it does need more kindness and love. We need to stop being so jaded and cynical about everything. Just be nice to people. It's funny that I wrote a lot of notes on this movie just because it's not like I didn't have any strong feelings about it. Like, I just generally kind of liked it. Like, yeah, I don't know. I have nothing else to say about it other than it's pretty good. I mean, if you feel like checking it out, I would, I guess, recommend it. I wouldn't say it's bad or anything. But I rated it a 7 out of 10, so like the same as Troy's. Maybe recommend waiting till Christmas to watch it again, because it's kind of just weird watching it in February. So yeah, that's all the movies that I've watched so far this year. Like I said, not a lot, but I've been busy with school and everything, I haven't had a ton of time to watch movies. Thank you guys for watching all of this rambling mess. If you've seen any of these movies, comment down below and let me know what you thought of them, and we can have a little discussion about them if you want. Please do that. I like discussing movies with people. I am hungry and I'm gonna go eat lunch, so I will see you in my next video whenever that comes out. Goodbye.